2 minutes, inshallah. 2 minutes.
Okay, no problem. So Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Inshallah, today we're going to be talking about the tales of the Sahaba, and we're going to be covering Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu anha, the confidant, the soulmate, the first true love of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is, a great honor to discuss her life, some of the episodes that took place between her and the Prophet sallam. As we know, the Sahaba, the companions of the Prophet sallam, their behavior, their life dealings, everything was molded and fashioned through their proximity to the Prophet sallam. And Khadija, uh, being his wife, she was senior to him. We know that she was 40 years old when they were married, and the Prophet ﷺ was 25 years old. And there's some history there. So let's back up and let's actually start a little bit from the beginning, inshallah. Khadija radiallahu anha, she was married twice prior to the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ, and she inherited a lot of property and wealth through those earlier marriages, and she had children in those earlier marriages also. The Prophet ﷺ, he said that Khadija was one of the four women who have perfected their faith, along with her daughter Fatima. So it was Khadija, Fatima, Maryam alayhi salam, and Asiya, the wife of Fir'aun. These are the four women in our tradition and history and heritage that have perfected their faith, and Khadija is one of them. So Khadija, she provided undeniable emotional support to the Prophet ﷺ, and this is going to be a cornerstone of this talk. It is an attribute of their entire marriage from beginning to end. So she was the first in many ways. Khadija radiallahu anha, she was the first to believe in the Prophet ﷺ when he came with the revelation. She was the first to see him receive revelation. She was the first to pray with him. She was the first to do tawaf with the Prophet ﷺ. She was the first to do qiyam with him as well. Prior to their marriage, both of them had very high standing in society. The Prophet ﷺ, as we know, he was a Sadiqul Amin, the trustworthy one. He was somebody that people would leave their life savings with him, and he would return it back to them every single dinar and dirham, right? And Khadija bint Khuwailid, her father was Khuwailid, her mother was Fatima. She came from a noble lineage herself within the Quraysh. And as a matter of fact, there's some history there also, wherein that her father Khuwailid and the Prophet Wasallam's grandfather Abdul Muttalib, both of them were protectors of the Kaaba in the time when Abraham came from Yemen to attack the Kaaba with his armed forces. So when they came, the Prophet Prophet's grandfather Abdul Muttalib and Khadija's father Khuwailid, they were both joined on the same side, protecting the Kaaba on behalf of the Quraysh at that time. So you have these two people of noble lineage and beautiful character. As we know later on, the Prophet ﷺ, he would tell us that marry somebody of good religion and good character. So right now, at the age of 25, when he was married to Khadija, they didn't have religion at that time. As a matter of fact, the Prophet ﷺ, he was muhannif. He was somebody that didn't partake in the idol worship and follow the ways of the forefathers. Neither was Khadija. So she also didn't subscribe to the idolatry that was going on in Mecca at the time. So both of them were people of this pure character and pure soul. And her nickname was At-Tahira, right? So the Prophet ﷺ, he was a Sadiq al-Amin, and this was his wife to be was At-Tahira. So two people of noble lineage and of beautiful character coming together in this very blessed union. It is said that Khadija radiallahu anha was so rich from her inheritance that she had received from her prior marriages that if you were to sum up all of the caravans that used to go on the trading routes, all of the caravans from the Quraysh, if you would sum them up, Khadija's by herself would be larger. And it's said that she had over 800 camels as part of her caravan and her entire business enterprise. And so she was extremely well off, extremely wealthy. And the introduction to the Prophet ﷺ is as follows. So the Prophet ﷺ, he used to herd sheep. As a matter of fact, this was actually somewhat of a prerequisite for all of the prophets. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have all of the prophets herd sheep. And there's wisdom behind that, because if a person is able to herd sheep, these animals that if you tell them to go right, they go left. If you tell them to go straight, they stop. If you say one thing, they do the other thing. If you're able to guide these, this flock of sheep, then this is somewhat of a training for prophethood, so that when they are in charge of, and the guidance of mankind is on their shoulders, and they're obligated to guide them, not just for this dunya, but for their akhirah, then they're equipped with this sort of skill set. So the Prophet ﷺ, he used to herd a flock of sheep, as the narration says, for a few dinars and dirham, for Khadija's sister Hala. And so Khadija was talking to Hala, saying that, all the people that she was doing business with, seems like she was getting the short end of the stick, and there was leakages in her business where money was kind of bleeding out. And she said that I need somebody that's extremely trustworthy, honest, reliable, that I can count on to lead my caravans and take them on the trading routes, and obviously go out and multiply the profits. And so Abdul Muttalib, Abu Talib was the caretaker of the Prophet ﷺ. Initially, they didn't want to do this, but eventually the Prophet ﷺ agreed to go ahead and go into business with Khadija and work for her. And she would then see that he would come back and multiply the profits, and her business was really flourishing. And so um, at that time, she started to ask around Maysara and Nafisa, and ask of his character, and getting to know him more through these third party sources. And her heart began to become inclined towards the Prophet ﷺ. And so, what's the norm in even in the Western culture, but also in the Eastern culture as well, is that the male or the boy or the young man is going to set forth the proposal. And this was not the case in this situation. It was actually Khadija radiallahu anha who inclined towards the Prophet ﷺ, and extended her hand for marriage after asking about him, and so on and so forth. Um, and as we mentioned, neither of them subscribed to idolatry when they got married. This blessed union that was coming together. There were lots of kids in the household. So Khadija radiallahu anha, she had children of her own from the previous marriages. There was also the six kids that she gave to the Prophet ﷺ. So as we know, the Prophet ﷺ and Khadija, they had four daughters: Kulthum, Ruqayya, Fatima, and Zainab, and two sons, Qasim and Abdullah. So all of these children were in the household. Then you also had Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu, who was also in the household. And then you had Zayd ibn Haritha, who was the adopted son of the Prophet ﷺ. He was sold into slavery. He was then sold to given as a gift to Khadija radiallahu anha, and then Khadija gave Zayd as a gift to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ freed him, and Zayd used to also stay in their household. The scholars say that there was no disagreements ever in this household. They only had good, pleasant, happy times in this household of Khadija and the Prophet ﷺ when they got married. As we know, there's 15 years that transpired before the Risala. Before the prophethood, there was 15 years that they lived together, they had children, and so on. Except for one event where Khadija's side of the family was having an event, and there was going to be some idol worship and things like that, and food that was going to be served. And the Prophet ﷺ, he just asked his wife that, if it's okay, I don't want to go to this event. I don't want to be a part of this event. And so, if we want to even call that a disagreement, obviously that is far from many of the disagreements that a husband and a wife can have. But that was the only time that is noted that Khadija wanted to go to this event, and the Prophet ﷺ, he actually wanted to stay back and not attend this event, and for some valid reasons, because of the idol worship that was going to be taking place there. During these 15 years, we know that the Prophet ﷺ, he started to go towards the seclusion and seeking, isolation in Ghar Hira, and he would go there often to contemplate about the troubles of his society and just to meditate on that and reflect on that and understand that when he got the prophethood, when he received prophethood and revelation at the age of 40, and Khadija radiallahu anha, she was 55 at the time. And during this whole period, she would be the one that would bring food to the Prophet ﷺ in Ghar Hira. And now, if anybody that's been to Mecca, who's gone on Hajj and Umrah, if you've gone to the cave of Hira, it's about a 1 hour trek, 1 hour to about an hour and 15 minutes up, going up that mountain. And in this, age of 55, and I understand she's a person of means. Khadija, certainly she has servants and she has money. She could easily send somebody up with the bread and the meat and the fruits and all of those things, all those provisions that the Prophet ﷺ would need to stay there for a few days. She could send that up with somebody else. And yet here she is as a middle-aged woman, a loving wife, that she goes out of her way to express that love, that she would take the food with her herself and take it to the Prophet ﷺ. And so this is a cornerstone and this defines their entire marriage, really, the emotional, undeniable support that she would give to the Prophet ﷺ. She was his source of serenity and his source of peace, that we will see throughout the years that they were married together. There's an author by the name of Stephen Covey. He wrote the book The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and he was giving a workshop once upon a time, and somebody comes to him at the end of the workshop and says, I don't think I'm in love anymore, and I will be divorcing my wife. And Stephen Covey, he says to him, well, that's where you've got it all wrong, my friend. Love is not a noun, love is a verb. And it goes to show us that love is expressed in moments like this, where Khadija radiallahu anha chooses to, despite all of the means and resources that are at her fingertip, takes the food to the Prophet ﷺ, and other acts of goodness and kindness that she would do. As a matter of fact, Halima, the wet nurse of the Prophet ﷺ, once he introduced her to Halima, and she showered Halima with gifts, all sorts of gifts and things like that she gave to her, and she would do that often with the people that the Prophet ﷺ had relationships with. She would shower them with gifts, and she really expressed her love and showed how much she loved the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, that we are a libas, a covering, a garment for our wives, and our wives are a libas for us. And what is a libas? This garment is made up of fibers that come together to make the garment. And those fibers are the smiles, the acts of generosity, the acts of courtesy. It's that action that you put. It's what you pour into your marriage. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ and Khadija are showing us, is an ideal exemplary marriage where both of them put forth the effort to have such a perfect union. When the revelation comes to the Prophet ﷺ, we know that narration all too well, where he's asked to recite Iqra by Jibreel alayhi salam. He comes down frantic from Ghar Hira, and he says, "Zamiluni, zamiluni, please cover me." And the Prophet ﷺ, he's literally shaking. He's trying to come to grips with what has just taken place. And if you think about it, if we come home from a long day of work, and we've had a lot of stressful situations at work, and we come home and we're a little bit out of it, what would our spouse say? Probably the answer would be, look, I think, you've had a long day. Why don't you sleep this off? Let's talk about it tomorrow. Maybe you're losing it a little bit right now because you had some stressful situations at work. Why don't we talk about this tomorrow? Why don't you sleep it off? Not Khadija radiallahu anha. Immediate, immediate belief in the Prophet ﷺ is what she gives to him. She gives him immediate belief, and she says to him, and she comforts him, and she says to him, no, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never forsake you. You are the type of person, innaka la tasila rahim, you look after your relationships. You're somebody that tends to your relationships. And wa taqsib al ma'dum, you look after the people that have fallen through the cracks of society and you uplift them, right? Wa tu'ain ala nawaib al haq, and you are somebody that is always there when there is a good cause. And so she's telling the Prophet ﷺ all the reasons why he is such a special person. She is reinforcing to him that Allah will never ever forsake you. There is no way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will play these type of tricks with somebody like you. You're a pure human being. And she's also, in a way, implying these are the same reasons why I married you as well. These are the same reasons. These attributes that you have that are so difficult to find in the people in our society, I found them in you. And Allah has identified them in you. And He will never, ever forsake you. And so come with me. Let's go to my cousin Waraka bin Nawfal. And he is a biblical scholar. And maybe he can shed some light on what has taken place. And so she takes him to to her cousin. And Waraka says that anybody that has come with this message will be driven out of their town. And the Prophet ﷺ said, they will, he's masum, he's innocent, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he says, they're going to drive me out of town. And he's in shock. And because this is somebody that was a Sadiqul Amin. Both him and Khadija radiallahu anha, as they are trying to come to grips with what has taken place, and now they have this obligation to go out and spread this message, right? Right after Al-Muzammil was revealed and then Al-Mudathir, now they have to go out and spread this message. They're trying to get an understanding of what have we gotten ourselves into now, and what is now being commanded of us here. And so when he says that you're going to be driven out of town, the Prophet ﷺ says, how could they do this to me? When there was a time in the past when both when the tribes of the Quraysh were fighting, when the Kaaba had been destroyed and it was rebuilt, and who was going to place the black stone back, and when the Prophet ﷺ they said that the next person that comes in will be the one, and they see the Prophet ﷺ and they choose him, right? And he helps them put this back. He is somebody that had a very special place in society, that people really looked up to him and trusted. And now he's going to be driven out of town, and he's going to go through all of these hardships because he's taken in this message and he's being asked to now propagate this message. And so, and we'll see how Khadija radiallahu anha, she could have easily said, look, we are people of reputation. We are people, we don't want to see our material wealth and our reputation be tarnished. Let's just do away with this message and pretend like it never happened. And no, she didn't do any of that. She stood by his side and she was his support all the way through. Ali radiallahu anhu, he said that, the Prophet ﷺ, at night he would stand up and pray. And easily Khadija could have been, she could have woken up and see the Prophet ﷺ, he's praying, and said to herself, well, he's on this journey, and I'll let him be. But no, she wouldn't do that. She would wake up from her sleep. You know how hard it is sometimes, and we're going through it now, sometimes waking up for suhoor, and some days it's quite easy, but other days it's quite difficult to get up for suhoor, right? Especially if you didn't get your sleep prior to that. And she would get up and she would stand next to the Prophet ﷺ, and she would copy his movements and she would pray with him to show that solidarity and to show that support, that whatever this is that you're going through, this revelation that you're receiving from God, I am by your side as a pillar of strength and as a pillar of support. I will always be by your side. And this is what she was showing with her actions. And so she was always this source of serenity and tranquility. And it would the Prophet, he would always be overcome with that sort of serenity anytime he had, the hardships that would come with propagating the message. Um, she also stayed with him during the years of the boycott, and that was a very, very difficult time, as we know. That um, she could have been somebody that just stayed at her own house, but to show solidarity, once again, she would stay with the Prophet ﷺ. And there came a time where they were getting provisions and food from her nephew Hakim, and even Abu Jahl found out about that, and he stopped that route. And it got to the point where they were eating crumbs and they were eating leaves, and she became extremely weak during this time. And again, at any time, she could have said that, no, okay, I'm going to go back home and recover there. And she stayed with the Prophet ﷺ in solidarity to be close with the Muslims and to show him that undeniable support through and through. And so uh, after she passed, this was an extremely difficult time for the Prophet ﷺ. As we know, his uncle Abu Talib had also passed, and so this is when the Prophet ﷺ was given Salah. Right, the scholars say that she was his source of serenity and his source of support and emotional support. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he needed to fill that void, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him Salah during the Isra and Miraj, because when she passed, he started to taste that bitterness of the dunya, and it was Salah that grounded him. His prayers is what grounded him and gave him that sense of peace back. We also know that Aisha, actually, before I go there, the Prophet ﷺ, after she passed, he would send, anytime he slaughtered a lamb or a sheep, he would send the meat over to her friends. He would gift her friends. Anytime he saw any of her friends, that he would be overcome with so much emotion. Hazrat Aisha, she said that, she became very jealous, and she had never met Khadija radiallahu anha. And she said that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, although that old woman is no longer with you, he replaced her with somebody better, meaning herself. And the Prophet ﷺ said, Kalla, absolutely not. He has not replaced her with anyone better than her. She believed in me when no one believed in me. She trusted me when everyone thought that I was lying. She spent on me, and she supported me financially when no one else would. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me children from her, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala he did not give me children from anyone else but her. So the regard that he had for Khadija radiallahu anha was so high. Jibreel alayhi salam, he came once. He said that Khadija is coming. The Prophet ﷺ, he didn't see that Khadija was coming. He said Khadija is coming, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives his salam, and tell her that Jibreel alayhi salam also gives his salam to Khadija. So she was the first to receive salam from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly and from Jibreel alayhi salam. And then he says that, and I also give her glad tidings for a house in Jannah. Glad tidings for a house in Jannah, that, of all of the trials and tribulations that she bore on her shoulders on behalf of the Prophet ﷺ, that now this is her ultimate reward, that she will have no noises of the dunya, she will have only peace and tranquility there. And so we know that she is somebody that is promised Jannah in the afterlife. And we also know that during the Fath of Mecca, when the Prophet ﷺ, during the conquest of Mecca, when he came back to Mecca and he was asked, where do you want to stay? Where do you want to set up your tent? He said, take me to Hujun, where the Khadija anha used to be. He wanted to be there just so that, he could be in that presence. Well after her passing, during the Battle of Badr, this is the final thing that I'll share, inshallah, and then we'll conclude. Zainab, his daughter, was married to Abu al-As, and Abu al-As was somebody that had not converted to Islam as of yet. We know later on in Medina he would convert, but he came as an enemy on the side of the opposition during the Battle of Badr, and he was captured during the battle, and the Sahaba, they were holding him, and a necklace that Zainab owns, an onyx necklace that was given from Khadija to Zainab. Zainab sent that to her father, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as a ransom. So we know that the Prophet ﷺ, he used to give the prisoners of war options, that if they were to teach 10 other companions how to read and to write, that they could earn their freedom that way, or if ransom was sent for them, that they would be freed, that way. So this he receives this necklace from his daughter, and he starts to cry and weep, and he gets so emotional because this necklace belongs to Khadija. And he goes very politely to the companions, because he knows all of the work and the lives that they had sacrificed of their own to go to battle. And he says, in shittum, if you will, if you can let this man go, right? He's very good to my daughter, and he has never harmed her in any way. And if it's at all possible, if you can please let them go. He did not command the companions to do this, and yes, they let him go. And we know later on that Abu As would convert to Islam. He wouldn't do it initially because he didn't want to be seen as somebody that, because of tribal affiliation, and that somebody that was swayed by his wife, that he was converting to Islam. And so he was freed because of this onyx necklace. And the Prophet ﷺ, he loved Khadija so much that he asked for him to be freed. So she was his first love. She was the first believer in Islam. She was the first one to pray with him, to do tawaf with him, to do qiyam with the Prophet ﷺ. She supported him emotionally from the beginning of his journey all the way to the end. And the love that reciprocated between the both of them is truly a love story that any one of us that is married can learn from. And so may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he although she lost so much in a material sense because of the journey that she went on with the Prophet ﷺ during his prophethood, she had so much and she lost it all in the way of Islam, but she gained everything in the akhirah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, unite us with the Prophet ﷺ and our mother Khadija in the afterlife, and allow us to learn these beautiful lessons from their marriage, how a husband and a wife should be putting in the effort and the actions to sustain and maintain a good relationship and a good union between ourselves. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make our children and our wives the coolness of our eyes, and make us from amongst the foremost of the righteous. Barakallahu li wa lakum wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
Jazakallah khairan, inshallah ta'ala. Please join us at 7 o'clock for the Juz recitation. Thank you, Shamal. And next one, and on this Thursday will be the Tales of the Sahaba continuing. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.